Hey, welcome, we're back. You're here at my devotional table and it is Good Friday. Good Friday. Why do they call it Good Friday? Because the story we're gonna tell, the story we're gonna think about today isn't a good story. It's a sad story. It's a story we've heard before, quite a few times maybe. And it's a story we're going to look at together. And how can it be a good story? Because we're going to look at the crucifixion of Jesus. Now, to help us, I think it's really important that we have a few things. My tea. Now, I've got my tea for me, my tea for Jesus. But I've also got my devotional box. My Bible is open and ready to Mark chapter 15. I've got some pens. And I do have a communion table with a twist. Now I have my bread and my wine. Do you know you can do communion 2 days in a row? You can do communion every day if that's what you think you would like to do. But also hiding on my communion table, I have got two of my favourite celebrations. Now it's important for what I'm going to talk about in a minute that you have at your table. If you'd like to do communion with me, you can again, but definitely a little bit of something good, a real treat that you love. And the reason I want you to have that treat with you is we know that we're about to look at the saddest, the most heartbreaking part of this story of Jesus's journey to the cross. And it really does break my heart to look at it. But I look at it through Jesus's eyes. And do you know what Jesus tells us? In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, the Bible tells us that for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross. That he knew that he was going to be taken and broken, and that his life was going to be given for us. He knew that his blood was going to be taken and spilt and given for us. But he did it for the joy set before him. This is where these come in. Do you know what is Jesus's joy? His favourite thing? It's not chocolate. I'm trying to think of other favourite things. It's not a favourite film. It's not a favourite place like the beach. When it says that Jesus went through the cross, the pain of the cross, for the joy set before him, do you know who his joy was? I'm going to tell you. It was you. It was me. When it says that for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, it means that when this sad story that we're about to remind ourselves of, the truth of this story, in all its sadness and its pain, happened to Jesus. Do you know how he endured it? Do you know how he got through? He thought of you. He thought of me. And he thought of his Father. He thought of Abba Father, God in heaven. And he knew that if his Father was with him, and that if it was for us, he could go through anything. So although we're going to look at the sad story today, I want you to keep that little bit of your mind, that little bit of your heart, that little bit of your soul, remembering it was for the joy set before him, that on the other side of this day, on the other side of this Friday, there is something good. So we're going to just look together at parts of the story. Now, I'm going to be reading from chapter 15, but verses, not necessarily all of it. And we're going to need today to help us think about the story, our Jesus. There is a piece of cloth, just knocked him over, and we have two bits, can you see, of the brown. Now, we're going to use those in a minute to make our cross. Okay, so I'm just going to lay them there, but at the right time in the story, we're going to use them to make our cross. So I'm going to start reading from Mark chapter 15, verse 1, okay, knowing that there is joy on the other side of this story. So very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin reached a decision. They bound Jesus, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate. So the Jewish Pharisees and elders had been after Jesus, hadn't they, ever since he'd come into Jerusalem and shut down the temple and revealed the truth about it. This house of prayer has been turned into a den of money. And that had really upset them. And ever since then, they've been trying to trick him, hadn't they? Remember, they'd asked him the question, should we pay money to tax to Caesar? They'd been trying to trick him. They've been trying to trap him. And this is the day they succeeded. And they bound him up. They wrapped him up in accusations and lies. And people listened and they believed them. They believed the lies. They believed what these people were saying about Jesus, even though we know it wasn't true. And so they succeeded in getting Jesus brought before Pilate. Now, Pilate was the Roman leader, so Rome still, the Romans still had power and control over really this place, over Jerusalem. So even though the Jews and the Jewish leaders wanted to do this to Jesus, they couldn't do it without Pilate. So they brought Jesus before Pilate. And actually, Pilate wasn't convinced, was he? He knew that the accusations and the lies weren't true, but he himself also got trapped into an awkward situation. And there was a custom that Pilate could present to the people somebody that had been arrested that they could call to be freed. And Jesus was set alongside a man named Barabbas. And the Jewish elders G'd up the crowd, whispered their lies, whispered their accusations. So actually the whole crowd went, we want Barabbas. And Pilate had no choice but to give and release Barabbas and to say that Jesus was to be crucified. And it says here that wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So, Jesus would have been whipped. That's what it means to be flogged. He would have been hurt. They would have made sure that he suffered and was in pain. And they handed him over to be crucified. Now, they put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" So they were mocking him and they were being cruel to him. Again and again and again, they struck him on the head with a staff and they spat on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. And then they led him out to crucify him. So Jesus did endure real pain, horrible treatment. They were cruel and they were wicked, and they led him out. So we're just going to show the leading out Jesus by just symbolically, we're just going to have to put him in the box for a minute so that we can make our cross. So we just need our two bits. And they led him out to be crucified. They led him out to be crucified. Now a certain man from Cyrene, Simon the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by him on the way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. So actually, because of the treatment Jesus had received, he was too weak to carry his cross. He couldn't carry it himself. He didn't have the strength. His body was ripped and torn. So they got a man to help him. And they carried him, and the cross was carried up to the place of the skull. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was the 3rd hour when they crucified him, and the written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." So they crucified him for claiming to be a king. They crucified him for the truth that he was the King of the Jews. They also crucified 2 robbers with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross, save yourself." So the voice of the people that came to look and jeer at him was cruel. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Christ, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe." Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. So not only had he been flogged and beaten, but now he was being slowly dying upon a cross in pain. And in that pain, they were still looking to shame him and humiliate him. At the 6th hour, darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. So for 3 hours, it was dark. The sun was so heartbroken, it couldn't even show its face. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing near heard this, they said, listen, he's calling Elijah. One man ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a stick and offered it to Jesus to drink. Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down, he said. And with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. So we're just going to put Jesus really gently in the box. Just for a minute. I'm just going to put my cross just in there. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus heard his cry and saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. So immediately somebody could just see what the truth was. Up until this point, so many people were blind, shouting insults. They couldn't see Jesus for who he really was. And in the moment that his life was gone, they saw the truth. Some women were watching from a distance, and amongst them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger and of Jose and Shalom. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who'd come up with him to Jerusalem were also there. Now, we know that this is the saddest part of the story. And when Jesus says, my Father, why have you forsaken me? One of the saddest, most heartbreaking moments of this story is that for Jesus to bear our sin, there was a moment, just a moment, when God couldn't look at him, when he knew that his Father had to turn away. So when Jesus says in that Last Supper, where was it? Take the bread, give thanks, break it and give it away. He was saying, I know that I am going to be taken. I am going to be broken. I am going to be given in death for you, for me. He had to go through this Friday. But we know, don't we, that this is not the end of the story. But I don't want to go to the good news of the story, the joy part, until Sunday with you. We've still got to get through the sadness of this part. So guys, I would love if you would want to join me to take communion. Again, you can. Yesterday we prayed for ourselves in communion. Today we're going to use communion just to say thank you to Jesus. Okay? So if you would like to join me. Jesus, we thank you. We thank you that this bread is your body. And it reminds us that upon the cross, you were taken and broken for me. And Jesus, I thank you that as your body was broken upon the cross, that your blood was spilt, that I might be free. I thank you for your blood, and I give thanks to you, Jesus, that you gave your life for me. So it is a Good Friday, but it is a sad part of the story. So guys, I would love to see you back with me tomorrow. I'm so glad that you're listening and being patient with me. And for the joy set before us, we know that this is not the end.